One of the biggest problems with SKAdNetwork, of course, lately is getting the data, figuring it out, knowing what you have to learn from the data, what is possible to learn from the data, and getting as much data as possible. It's less data than it ever has been for mobile marketers, and you have to make sure that the data you are getting is as good as it can be. So Singular has released something quite interesting. It's called Optimized Conversion Models. And we're here with product manager Evyatar Ram to figure out what the heck that is, how it works, and whether you should check it out. Hello, Evyatar.
Hi, John. Thanks for that. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for being here. You're in a hotel, you're leaving for Belize tomorrow, and yet you're with us. We appreciate it. You're not packed yet. Who cares? Last minute, it'll all work out.
I hope so. Yeah.
I hope so too. Talk about SKAN conversion models and the accuracy of the data, how dependent that is on selecting the right model.
Yeah. So definitely what we've seen on SKAdNetwork is that everyone wants to get accurate data. It doesn't matter if it's like your revenue or it's some sort of model revenue. You'd like it to be accurate. I mean, clearly.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a great conclusion we got to.
Yeah. We want accurate data. Okay, now, excellent. Yeah. Point of the podcast.
Most people think you want inaccurate data, but no, you want accurate data. No, I'm kidding. And the key component to getting accurate data, whether it's revenue or whether it's model revenue, is having the correct model. I think the interesting thing here is, though, that everyone understands that for modeled revenue, if you're trying to get 7-day or predictive or something, you need a super optimized model. But I think the interesting thing here is that even if you're just trying to get accurate 1-day revenue, that's like fully encoded in SKAdNetwork, even for that use case, selecting the right conversion model impacts the accuracy of the number that you will get at the end of the day.
That is really interesting. Of course, people have had so many challenges setting up SKAN correctly, right? But you would kind of think, you would just kind of think, okay, I'm going to pick a model. It'll tell me what that model can get. But you're saying some models work better for your app than others.
Yeah, so I'll give an example. So like you select buckets, right, for revenue. And the way you select these buckets matters, because if you're selecting a bucket of, let's say, $1 to $10, right? That's a bucket. And then you have a bunch of users there who have $2 revenue, and a bunch who have $4, and a bunch who have $8, and a bunch who have $9. At the end of the day, when you get that post back and you decode it back to a number, like you're losing so much of the granularity. You're losing a lot of the detail there, and because you're giving a single number to all those users, and that's where the accuracy comes into play. So you're trying to find buckets where if you're going to decode that conversion value to, let's say, $3 revenue, you want to find a bucket where that's actually an accurate statement.
Interesting, because your users at $2 and your users at $9 could be very, very different, could be very, very, and the way you need to treat them is very, very different. So you've created what you call optimized conversion models. Give us the snapshot. What is it?
So basically what it is a recommendation where we look at your data and we say, here's a recommendation for a model. If you use this model, the revenue data that you will see will be more accurate. And kind of the way we do it is we analyze the user level data that we're still getting from the SDK. So we're still getting accurate user level data for every device that's installing the app, and we analyze it and we kind of find the conversion model, or we find the buckets that optimize for the minimum error, so maximum accuracy.
Interesting. So you're just checking in the background all the time if you could find a model that's more accurate than what a customer might be using right now. How often are you checking?
So for every app out there, we actually check the data once a week. So every week we're going to see if you have a better model or not. One of the things that we had to develop for this feature is kind of an idea of what does it mean to be a better model. So we need to be able to rank models. So we have a mechanism that does that. And then every week we will look at our most optimal model, and we look at what model the customer already has, and we can say, well, if we think that our model is significantly better than the one that you might be using, we'll recommend it. And if it's not, if it's like, maybe we can get a model that's 2% better or something really slight, we feel that's noise, like that's not interesting. And so we're not going to recommend it.
Is significantly better like 10% better? Is it 20% better? Just anything above that?
There are thresholds that are around 20%. So our model needs to be 20% more accurate than the model that's currently in use for us to recommend it.
It's really interesting to me because I think that a lot of mobile marketers set up SKAdNetwork, kind of in the same mindset as you might have set up funnels or data as you, in the IDFA era. Set it, forget it, right? And there's my conversion model. There you go. And they're not checking this stuff regularly. But you're saying, hey, actually, things change, right?
Yeah. So I think even if, let's say, you do put in a lot of time and effort and come up with the optimized models, you can't just set it and forget it because things change, the app changed, the UA activity changes, the marketing changes, the way you monetize the app might change. And a model that might be optimized for today or optimal for today might not be the optimal model 6 months from now. So we do think it's important to keep checking it. And then, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, a year later, suddenly there's a better model, then you should use the better model.
I love it. The world's changing. We know that whether it's inflation, whether it's economy, whether it's employment, other stuff like that, the world is constantly changing. Cohorts that you bring in are different. Existing cohorts might behave differently as well. Now you've got something that's just checking ongoing all the time in the background, and I'll let you know. Will it tell you how much more effective that new model will be?
Yeah. So we actually try to quantify it and say using this model will be 30 or 35% more accurate. We also give you options. Like we say, well, if you want to use 64 buckets, so use all 64 bits, you'll get this much more accuracy. If you just want to use, let's say, 32 values, then it'll be it might be a different number.
Interesting. Now, you're doing this for revenue conversion models right now. What about other types of conversion models?
So that's definitely something that's on our roadmap, and hopefully we'll have some things to share soon. But we do recognize that other conversion models are really, really effective, especially what we call mixed models. So these models where you have some bits used for revenue and some bits used for events. And we want to kind of, going forward, have the ability to also recommend, let's say, an optimal mixed model or other types of models.
That's interesting, and I understand why it's on the roadmap and not completed yet, because revenue, of course, has some level of simplicity to it. Mixed models, when you're mixing things, are a little more complicated. Now, we've got SKAN 4 on the horizon, right? We don't know when it's going to drop, maybe November, maybe December, we'll see. SKAN 4 doesn't just have one postback, it has 3. SKAN 4 doesn't just have one type of conversion payload in your postback, it has multiple. How is this feature going to work in the era of SKAN 4?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think SKAN 4, at this point, there's still a lot of unknowns, right? No one knows exactly, well, how are people going to use the course conversion values? We have some ideas. We're talking to also a lot of advertisers and kind of trying to get a sense, but there's still a lot of unknowns. But what is clear is that in some respects, and SKAN 4.0 does a lot of really great things, but in some respects, managing your SKAN setup in SKAN 4.0 might become more complex. So for example, today you have to set up one conversion model, and even that's pretty complex. In SKAN 4.0, you could possibly need to set up 4 different conversion models because you have the full granularity model, same as you have today. And then for the course conversion models, those 0, 1, 2 sort of models, you could have a different model for the first postback, for the second postback, and for the third postback. So potentially you might need to set all of these up independently. And what we think is that if we are able to kind of simplify that problem and kind of recommend models that make sense to what the advertiser is trying to get done and understand from a business perspective, we think that's the direction that could have a lot of potential as well.
I love it. I think that's the direction that ad tech needs to move in more and more. Have an advertiser, have a brand say, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to accomplish. And the solution says, here's the way to do it. And the solution is continually checking to see, hey, maybe there's a better way. Maybe there's another way. Maybe you should consider using this. Maybe you should consider using that. That makes a ton of sense. One other question I had, You must have done some testing with this. You probably got some beta customers. So you've obviously been developing this feature for a long time. You've been probably looking at lots of different data sets. What's your estimate of the percentage of customers, of marketers, who this will help, who there's a better model out there and they don't know it yet, but this will tell them?
So that's a great question, because a lot of advertisers are doing a really good job in getting the right models. And then when we do our analysis, we're like, yeah,
check.
Yeah. But we are seeing that it's around the area of like 30 to 35% of the advertisers that we see, for which we can offer a better model. And some it's a sort of slightly better model, so like 20%, and some it can even be a significantly better model.
Put a number to it. What's significantly better?
We've also seen like things like 60%, 65%. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so what we're talking there is potentially in the order of 30 to 60% more accurate data. What's that going to help you do?
So at the end of the day, like it'll help you make better decisions, because like if you're making decisions today off of data, which is
Inaccurate,
not accurate,
wrong,
then that's not good, and hopefully like in the long term, if you're continuously making decisions that are based off of better data, your UA activity should show.
Absolutely. You should get better results. You should be able to optimize campaigns better. You should be able to pick partners better. You should be able to do your entire job better. Well, Evyatar, thank you so much for this time. Do appreciate it. Very, very cool new feature, and enjoy your trip to Belize.
Thanks, John. Always a pleasure.